And so these were the shots as they just got down back into the Western Combe before they descended down. And of course, the outside world at this point didn't even know that they'd been to the top. It took altogether 3 or 4 days.
You know, at about 17,600 feet is the base camp of Mount Everest. That is where most people go on treks. And I think the 1 or 2 people I met earlier that said they've been to base camp of Everest. And beyond the base camp is the actual mountain where you actually have to climb the mountain. And one of the most dangerous climbs on the south face is going through the Khumbu Icefall. And Icefall is basically a huge river of ice boulders that are moving constantly each and every day. Almost a few feet every day it moves. So you have to be really, really careful to go through these ice falls. Almost about 60 people have died in the ice fall so far. And you know, some of the boulders are about 100, 200 feet tall. Some of the crevices are very, very deep, you know, that you don't even see the bottom of it. And a lot of people have fallen, you know, into the crevices. You know, the Sherpas also say that, you know, if you fall in a crevice, you will go all the way to America, you know, other side of the world, without a visa. And to go through the icefall, we have a team of Sherpas that actually set the route through the icefall, setting the ladders and setting the ropes all the way through the icefall because it's constantly moving. So every day they have to go and change. You know, 2 Sherpas would go every morning, maybe at 1 in the morning, go through the icefall to make sure the route was safe, and if it wasn't, the job was to fix it. And we use almost over 70 to 80 ladders on the first section of the climb alone, just going through the icefall. And I'll just show you a clip of the icefall so you have an idea of what it is like here.
They used timbers to span these crevasses, and now we've got, on this one, 3 aluminum ladders that you'd use to paint the side of your garage lashed together with some old cord. And it's a little nerve-wracking going over this because we're 100 feet down to the bottom of this crevasse.
There are other things that you have to deal with up there. It's not just the Khumbu Icefall and great crevasses. It's also dealing with things such as unbelievable storms, jet stream speed winds of 200-300 knots. That can be over 500 kilometers per hour. And of course, the incredibly debilitating effects of the high altitude itself. As a consequence, when you're climbing at 8,000 meters, you are literally hyperventilating, moving incredibly slowly, and that's how affected you are. Now, back in 2002, when Jumling and I were on the National Geographic expedition, we made 2 attempts on the summit. And the first time we got up to the South Col, and you can imagine, you know, it's pretty exciting. You've got the tent there, and, you know, you're hoping the weather's going to be good so you can head out to, you know, that night with the headlamp and everything. But the conditions were not good. The wind started blowing, and by the next morning we hadn't gone. We were scared because the wind was just thundering over the South Col at 8,000 meters, this massive wind, and we collapsed the tents, and we retreated back down the mountain as fast as we could go. And Brent Bishop, who you've seen in some of the previous clips, he and I moved down quickly together down the 1,500 meters of the Great Lhotse Face into the Western Combe, down the icefall that Jumling was just talking about, and we got all the way down to base camp in 1 day. And when our National Geographic film crew arrived down there early the next morning, you know, we could see something had happened because these guys, they were really shocked. And, you know, when someone's had a terrible experience, you just can't shut them up. I mean, they've just got to talk and get it off their shoulders. And Jimmy Surrett, one of the cameramen, was just saying, as they came through that icefall that we saw in the previous clip, a whole region of that fragile ice pinnacles, the seracs, and the great crevasses just started to collapse. And this is one of the things that can happen. One by one, just collapsing into the bowels of the glacier. And they unclipped from the ropes and were sprinting across, just keeping in front of it until they got up to a big vertical ice wall where they saw it come right up to them and fortunately just stop. Well, needless to say, everyone was wondering, do we go back up there again when the conditions get better, when the weather improves? And all of a sudden you found that a lot of people are going, I'm not going to go back up, which included our National Geographic film crew. I started thinking the same thing. But it's a great example of how opportunity comes in all sorts of different guises. And suddenly you go, well, now that area has collapsed, it is at least temporarily more secure. It's safer. And we ended up putting a new team together with different members from the team. Pete Athens and Kami Sherpa took over doing the filming on the climb. And we went back up for another go once the weather had improved. And I just want to show you a bit of footage of what the weather can be like up there on Mount Everest.
On Everest, the weather takes a turn for the worse. They'd planned to leave Camp 2 after a few days, but they're pinned down by the wind and can't move higher. Peter Hillary, now recovered and at Camp 2, watches climbers trying to reach Camp 3 on the Lhotse face.
What we've had here over the last 24 hours is jet stream winds just blasted over the summit of Everest. And you can see tents have been flattened and ripped all around the cab. And we've got collapsed tents everywhere.
Pete and Brent have been forced off their West Ridge route. The wind chill, poor visibility, and the possibility of losing camp pose the biggest danger.
Well, the consequences of such weather can be deadly and devastating if something goes wrong. And in 1996, in the spring of 1996, on the 10th of May, 9 people died in one single night due to getting caught in a storm high above on the mountain near the summit. And I think a total of 14 climbers died that particular season. It was during that time we were filming with the IMAX film, with the IMAX team, and we were waiting down at the lower camp so that, we can wait for the other climbers to come back and we would continue after that. But after these people, all the accidents happened, there were almost about a dozen or so climbers still stranded high up on the mountain. So we actually put down all the camera gear and went up on the mountain to help bring back the dozen survivors that were up there, including Beck Weathers. I'm not sure if you've seen or heard about him. He's one of the climbers that was left for dead at 26,000 feet because he was hardly moving, so his climbing partners thought he had died, so they left him there. And 24 hours later, he miraculously sort of opened his eyes, and then he sort of managed to crawl to his tent. He said, no matter what happens, whether I'm going to fall off the cliff or whether I'm going to get to the tent, I'm going to crawl and get to the tent. And he finally got there, and the next morning, we had to literally carry him down this mountain because his legs, hands, face, everything was frozen. And we managed to bring him down to Camp 2, including the other survivors. And then the next morning, we organized another rescue to bring everybody off this mountain, including one of the dead Taiwanese climber that was up here on the mountain that time. So I'll just show you a small clip from that part of the expedition here.
Just above the high camp, a climber named Beck Weathers had been out in the storm for over 22 hours. He had been left for dead by other climbers. And then, nearly blind, his hands literally frozen solid, Beck stood up, left his pack, and desperately tried to walk.
All I knew was that as long as my legs would run and I could stand up, I was going to move toward that camp, and if I fell down, I was